Hey guys, Trev from the Struggling Artist Podcast, and I want to talk to you real quick about Struggling Artist Record Club. The Struggling Artist Record Club is a vinyl record subscription service where I hunt and curate the best punk and punk-adjacent music out there and mail their record to your door each and every month. Imagine finding your new favorite band from across the country without ever having to leave the house. It doesn't get much better than that. The excitement of discovering new music just got that much easier. As a member of the Struggling Artist Record Club, you are going to receive some of the best music you've ever heard from bands you may never even heard of. Whether you've been collecting records for years or just starting out, the Struggling Artist Record Club is designed specifically for you. And right now, all new members get a Struggling Artist Record Club exclusive along with the monthly selection. So head to StrugglingArtistRecordClub.com, pick a membership, and start building that collection today.
You're listening to the Struggling Artist Podcast.
People need to be entertained. They need the distraction.
With your host, Trev Allen.
I wish to God that somebody would do something to block out the voices in my head for 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited for this episode. I'm always excited for all the episodes, but this one in particular, I got to talk to Dr. Disc, who does the record store Recon for Goldmine magazine. Goldmine is a vinyl record publication that's still in print. They're digital as well, but they're still in print. And they've been around since the 70s. They have scoring guides and price guides for your records. They interview musicians and they do so much over there. And Dr. Disc does the record store Recon, where he goes in and he kind of does secret reviews for record stores, small record stores. I had so much fun talking with him. And so check out his Instagram, check out the magazine. I'll have all the links. You know where they'll be. This is episode 288 of the Struggling Artist Podcast. Struggling with Dr. Disc and the record store Recon. Doing this podcast, I've met so many different people from all over the place, different, whether they're musicians or authors or journalists or just people and I've never had anybody who really specialized in vinyl like you do. So this is fun because maybe I'll learn something because I know I like vinyl. I know I've got a bunch of records behind me, but I might learn something today is what I guess is what I'm getting at.
Happy to help.
So let's get started. So you were saying you've written for Goldmine magazine for, you said how long?
Gosh, I've been writing for Goldmine for probably 12 to 13 years now, maybe even a little longer, but it's been a while.
Now they're a publication that's been around for a minute.
As a matter of fact, this is our 50th anniversary.
That's insane. And for a publication to still be doing it and still putting out print, that's another thing, right?
That is correct. You will find us in every Barnes & Noble and every Books A Million. And then, of course, mail order. We get a lot of subscribers that we just deliver directly to their homes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, where's the base for this? Where's home base?
Well, Pat, our editor, is New York, New Jersey based. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's kind of where it comes from. But like most things nowadays, we're all in the infinite universe. And so, I'm Chicago based, but it could be from anywhere.
Mm. Now, I want to talk real quick because I talk about it a lot on the podcast, how much I love Chicago. Like Chicago is like a music place to discover new bands. I've found it's like I love New England because I'm from here and there's a lot here, and I love Seattle for many years, but Chicago is like a hub for me for like whenever I hear there's a band from Chicago, I gotta hit them up. Tell me a little bit about like being there, and I noticed too, like I seen a lot of the things that you write on them. You're very punk rock driven, right?
I am. I mean, I've got some classic rock and things like that I enjoy, and every once in a while I'll even pull out a jazz album. But most of it is punk, and that seems to be when I'm doing interviews for Goldmine. I tend to be doing more interviews that are punk related or punk adjacent, along with my reviews of record stores.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, like, and again, I get put in that like, yeah, I do this like. People call it a punk rock podcast. I'm like, it's not necessarily that, you know what I mean? Like, and again, there's a lot of punk adjacent out there that for me, like punk rock was always like a mentality, not like a sound, you know what I mean? Like it was like doing things that normal people wouldn't be doing, or normal bands where have a specific sound for a specific reason. You're doing something different because that's the sounds that come to you. And I think those are my favorite bands, you know?
No, I agree. I mean, I'm sure I will catch crap for what I'm about to say, but I'm a big Steve Earle fan. And, people used to label him as like outlaw country. But I always thought, that was just like punk, because he was doing what he wanted to do, how he wanted to do it, and it was different than the mainstream. So going back to what you just said, I agree. I think punk is doing something different because that's what you want to do.
No doubt, yeah, for sure. And again, like, I mean, I always use like the Minutemen as a good example of that. Like their sound was so different than most of the stuff that was coming out of the 80s at that time, you know?
Oh, well, I mean, I think Wire, you think of a band like Wire, that's a band that for years, like, it's hard to label them, right? How do you put them in a category? And sometimes you hear people talk about, post-punk, they're post. Well, I don't know, man. I think they're punk because to me, what they were doing was totally different than what other people were doing. So what? They could actually play their instruments, so we shouldn't consider them punk because they could actually play their instruments?
Right.
No, I disagree.
Yeah. I always get into that, like, I don't know anything about subgenres. Like I'll start making up words, just like making up like subgenres just to kind of like combat it, because like at the end of the day, like it's all rock and roll. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all art, really. It's all has a meaning. Like you can date things back all the way back to Robert Johnson and the sound that he had, and that's just something like I always like kind of beat home because like I feel like people forget that,
Well, I was just doing an interview last week with probably one of the most influential photographers in the punk genre. And he said to me, he goes, I know I'm going to catch crap for this, but I don't think the Ramones are punk. He said to me, the Ramones are pop. That's what they were. They were a pop band, 3 chords playing. It was pop music. It was a different style of pop, but that isn't punk. Now, he's coming from being there at ground zero for the Circle Jerks and Black Flag and 7 Seconds and that hardcore. And that, in his mind, that's what he says is punk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone's got their own definition, really.
Yep. Well, what's that old saying about opinions and assholes?
Yeah, for sure. So tell me, like, Goldmine magazine is am I saying it is Goldmine magazine, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Goldmine magazine.
So like it's a publication that, at one point was only physical media, much like the stuff that it covers, right? It's the vinyl record thing. And then the digital media world has come around, and like, how do you stay like, other than like, I mean, it's a household name for anybody who collects vinyl. I think it's Goldmine. So, but outside of that, like, how do you like navigate through like the digital world and everything? Like, I mean, you guys have a podcast, right? You guys have online articles, newsletters that go out, and how do you guys stay kind of active? You know,
how do you stay relevant?
Yeah.
Right. How do you stay relevant? It's I think that Pat and the other writers do a really good job of staying relevant with the issues, and getting artists that people are interested in still. I mean, I've had the fortune, I've gotten to interview Glenn Matlock from, the bassist from the Sex Pistols. I've gotten to interview The Damned several different times. But I've also interviewed, the whatever, a small band out of Cleveland, Ohio. I've talked with Kevin Seconds. I've talked with the Voodoo Glow Skulls. So I mean, at the end of the day, selfishly, I interview the people that interest me, and in most cases, they seem to interest a lot of other people. I mean, I did a phenomenal interview with Jack Grissom of TSOL. And man, he was straightforward, and it was a great interview. I had the opportunity to sit down with Lee Ving, and I've never been more scared going into an interview than sitting there. And you know what? He was the nicest person I've ever met. And he told me the whole Saturday Night Live story. And I mean, it was great hearing about it from the guy that was right there on stage. It's so I think Goldmine has done a good job of staying relevant. Yes, we pivoted throughout the, years based on adding additional features based on other genres of music, but vinyl has always been our bread and butter. I mean, people talk about how they used to go through the pages of Goldmine, the back pages, and that's where they would buy all their fan club editions. They would reach out and they would get live shows and things like that. It was the original trading magazine, and there's still a lot of people that use it for that.
Yeah. Now, do you guys have any kind of price guide or something like that? Is that part of it?
Yeah. The Goldmine price guide for the longest time has been the kind of the Bible of the used record industry, and I think that's how a lot of people probably know Goldmine. They probably know it by the price guide even more than they know it by the publication itself.
And how does I don't know if you work on that side of it, but how do you decide what goes into something like that and what has to stay out?
You know what? That will be a phenomenal question that you will be able to talk to Pat about when we interview you on our podcast.
All right. Because I just for me, and again, I don't know much. I remember, so I was born in 81, so I had records, right? I had a couple records, but then cassette kind of became the thing. So, but I remember my first record, I had Michael Jackson's Thriller. I also had, and I brag about this, I had a RCA Selectavision, which played a vinyl record, but in video format that no one really knows about because VHS popped up a month later and destroyed it. But you know what I'm saying? So I remember these types of media, and when I decided I wanted to buy a record player as an adult, it was more for a nostalgia hit than anything, right? I was I can just go to some yard sales and buy records. And I did do that. And I've done that, Craigslist sale. I have 745s of just dancehall reggae singles because I love dancehall, and I found them on Craigslist for cheap. And the guy's like, "Are you a DJ?" I'm like, "No." You know what I mean? So when I started doing it, it was for this nostalgia thing. But I remember a lot of people were like, "Oh, vinyl's coming back." But throughout the 90s, punk rock and hip hop stayed pretty relevant with putting out vinyl as well. And then you had the big national acts would do it still too. But for the most part, it's never really left, No,
if you're a collector, vinyl was always there. No doubt about it. And you're right in the fact that it was a lot of the punk bands that kept vinyl going through the very lean years. And I think that's that's probably what has frustrated some of the punk genre bands during COVID, especially during COVID, when plants were really backed up and when it was taking 18 months to get an album out. Well, then you'd have somebody, and listen, somebody like Adele has done a lot for the music industry, right? I mean, she sells millions of albums, and somebody like Taylor Swift sells millions of albums. But when one of those go to press, it pushes, all the small orders back. And so the people who were requesting orders of 2,000, 5,000, 500 records were having to wait like 18 months to get their product. And it was killing them because they couldn't tour to support it. And a lot of times they had already had a second album out now, and they never toured for the first album. So there has been some frustration, I know, from the punk bands towards the labels where they're like, we were there for you when it was lean, but why aren't you there for us now that everybody's getting fat again? Like, you just push us to the back of the line.
It's a safe argument. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's valid. Yeah. Yeah. I remember that whole, cause like, so at that time I was still, nope. I was a part, I started, the record club that I have. I started as a member of it. And that's how I discovered bands like the Drowns. And, I took a year off because my business had me traveling. I was traveling so much. So I took a year off from doing the record club, and then I'd like buy stuff here and there from like, Bandcamp or whatever. And that's where I was seeing this like delays and it was a bummer, you know what I mean? And then there's people like the consumers who don't quite understand that would like get frustrated and want a refund from the band. Like, it's not the band's fault. You know what I'm saying? It was just a crazy because I'm pretty sure there was wasn't there like a pressing plant that like over somewhere in Europe that like one of the big ones like caught fire or something like that? So
yeah, that's correct. So I mean, you lost a whole pressing plant due to a huge fire. There was a shortage on the black bits that they use for making the vinyl. Mm-hmm. And so that backed everything up. There was a huge shortage on that. And so I think that's what's created the huge boom, because even up till 4 or 5 years ago, you were still seeing most new albums were coming out around $22.
Yeah.
Now, MSRP on a lot of new albums are like $40. It's ridiculous.
It's tough. Yeah, it's definitely, it's tough in like, the record club. Like, we're going through a transition for like price, because the $20 price point it's not working the way I need it to. You know what I mean? Like, especially with like I had to like turn away some awesome bands that I wanted to put the record out, but like I couldn't match it to my cap. You know what I mean? So it's been but thankfully I have a huge not a huge, but like the people who are part of the club, like they're in it, like they're like, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? So we had to do and I think we're doing a slight increase because of all this, though.
Yeah, I think that I think there's two types of record fans. There's people who buy the music because they're going to play it and they love it. And those are the people who are going to be like, you know what? I understand that you have a price increase and I'm good with that, because at the end of the day, bands should be able to make money off of what they're doing, and you should be able to make a couple of bucks off of being able to do, the record club, which, by the way, phenomenal record club.
Thank you
we'll
so
talk
much.
About that.
Thank you.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But the other collector, to me, is kind of like the baseball card collector, where they're buying these things and they're not even opening them. They're just storing them. They're stocking them away, and they're the ones who want to know what number, how many variants are there going to be? Do I need to buy all 4 different colors? And yet they may never know anything about the band. They just bought it because they're speculating on the fact that they're going to make money off of it somewhere down the road. That's a shame. To me, that's not what music is about. To me, and I bet an artist would tell you also, they want their music played.
I float in between those. So like I need to consume new music daily. Like I'm listening to new things. I've actually talked to people who they they make a list. They try to listen to a new band every day, and like they make like a spreadsheet, and it's awesome. I wish I could do that, but my brain is way too scattered for that. But I try to do the same thing, like just for myself. And when I find something like, you know, like over here on the wall, I don't know if you can see the yellow record, but the Ducky Boys, like you know, the Ducky Boys Dark Days album, I have every variant. I listen to one of them, and then I have one that's unopened. I have this one that's in the frame. You know what I mean? So like, but I have to listen to it. Like, I'm never gonna like if I get something like, I remember one time Mark had who had the record club before me, he had sent out a record. I forgot what, I think it might have been a Pegs record, and it was numbered. And I was like, now I have to buy another one to listen to because I can't open this.
But that's okay, because at least you're listening. You're listening to that band, and great. Hey, you're buying double. The band's not going to complain about that, right? But it's the person who just buys it and tucks it away and never listens to them.
Yeah. You know, the people who, and they'll do that with everything, right? Like Mondo Tees will do a print of something and it's rare, and then someone will buy it, and then they'll just sell it. They just want to flip it for more money. And like, it's to the point, I know they put out a thing like you're only allowed to buy one per household now. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they're it sucks because there's like this like capitalism kind of thing to it all, you know?
Well, and I think this has been one of the probably largest ongoing debates around Record Store Day and Black Friday. And when I am visiting record stores, inevitably this becomes a topic with every record store owner, you know, because I'll ask them, so how do you take care of your regulars on Record Store Day? What do you do? Because their biggest frustration is they don't want to cater to the flippers, right? But at the end of the day, if I'm a shop owner, I just need to move the product. I've put out a ton of capital on these 2 days of the year, and I need to move this product. And while I much would rather it go to a fan than somebody who's going to flip it, from my perspective as a shop owner, I just need to get it out of my store, right? Because if it doesn't sell within the first 24 hours, it's going to be in a bin 2 years from now. Yeah,
it's unfortunate that happens, but yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I talk with a lot of store owners kind of about like what are the unique things that they do then. And I know some stores, what they'll do is as customers are coming into the store throughout the year, you know, every 10 records you buy from our store, you get a number, you get a ticket. And then at the beginning of Black Friday or Record Store Day, we draw those tickets, and those are the people who get numbers 1 through 10. You know, and then so if you've never spent anything at my store, the closest you're going to get is number 11. Okay, great. You know, take care of your regulars. That's the biggest thing when you're sitting in line on Record Store Day, and I love Record Store Day. I really do. I mean, I'm a big fan of it. I think we could do with a little less of the reissues. I don't need another Fleetwood Mac Rumors, you know, variant, picture disc, you know, backward masking version. But I mean, I'd like to see things come out from bands that have never been out before, and that maybe you can only get on Record Store Day that one time, and then it's gone. Like the Foo Fighters did something many years ago where it was like a cover album that they did, and it was, you could only get it on Record Store Day. I think there were like 1,000 of them, and they're gone. That to me is a fun item.
Yeah, that's awesome. That brings me back to like when I was a kid going into a record store, and you'd find like these rare imports of like, oh, this band did this an acoustic over here, and things like that. Yeah, those are cool things to do. Now, I want to talk about you in record stores because you've been to quite a few of them, right? It's called Record Store Recon.
That is correct. Record Store Recon.
Break it down for me.
All right. So I guess the first thing I will tell you is I have never done a bad review. Now, that doesn't mean that I have not been in bad record stores. Trust me, I have been in a lot of bad record stores. But if the record store doesn't connect with me, I'm not going to trash it. Because at the end of the day, who the heck am I to get to tell somebody that their dream just because it didn't match up to my dream isn't a good dream. It might be. And there may be lots of people that like it, so I just won't do it. I'll move on to a different store. But I find record stores, not only in the United States, but Germany, England, Switzerland, Spain, that something connects with me about the store. And I usually don't let them know that I'm there reviewing the store. I'll just start taking some notes. And then when I leave, or right before I leave, then I'll introduce myself. And I'll let them know, I write for Goldmine Magazine. We're going to do a feature on their store in an upcoming issue. We're going to do a podcast right around the time that the issue drops also, where my editor and I are going to talk about the store. And we kind of rate it on a couple of different ratings. A 40 is a perfect score. I think we've only had 3 or 4 stores since I've been doing these that have ever gotten a perfect score. And we just I talk about how the employees are, what's the cleanliness of the store. Is there music playing, or is it is it like a scene out of High Fidelity where you walk in and the guy yells at you because you asked for the Debbie Gibson album? So what's their store swag? Do they have some cool store swag? What's their prices? How knowledgeable are their staff? Does somebody come and find you and say, "Hey, can I help you?" Or do they not talk to you or even look up from the magazine they're reading the whole time while you're shopping? So, I've been doing that for like 12 years now.
That's awesome. And you've got to travel the world and visit all these different places and see how their stores are. Now, let me ask you, from in the world of digital streaming, right? We've seen it go from the small record shops in our hometowns to, record towns and Strawberries and Newbury Comics, all the the bigger ones, and then now we're in the age of digital. Like, does that affect what's going on in these record stores? Like, because it's so far, it's to the general population, it's so far removed, right?
Yeah, I guess what I would tell you, so I still seem to see kind of 2 extremes of the record store. There's the ultra clean mall type record store. Newbury Comics is a great example, although Newbury is amazing. I mean, if people have not visited a Newbury, they need to get to it, because I know it's comics and Funko Pops and all that other stuff, but the records they have there are good, especially for new stuff and for very unique stuff, because Newbury does a lot of private issues, through their own store. But they're very ultra clean, right? You walk in there and everything's very sterile. Then there's the other side of the record store, which is kind of that smaller, single owner store where maybe there's a couch in the store because they want you to hang out and they want you to sit down and relax, and there might be some listening stations, and maybe you gotta get down on your knees and dig through the crates underneath the table to find the backup stuff or the dollar bin stuff. Those are the stores I love spending time at, right? I mean, to me, a record store should be a center focal point in every community, right? You want to know, like the old barber shop was. You want to know what's going on in a town, music related. I want to go to a record store and I want to see band flyers all over the store, right? I don't want to have to ask, is anybody playing here this week? I want to be able to look and see on the wall all the bands that are playing all over town. That, to me, that's what a record store is all about. Those are my favorite record stores to just hang out at. And I look at places like in one of my favorite ones outside of Los Angeles, because I always just say it's Rancho Cucamonga, Dr. Strange Records. That is a phenomenal record store that, like, you just want to sit down and hang out there. That's how they make you feel. They're Reckless Records in Chicago. Again, so many bins to go through. They make you feel welcome. They do in stores. But you go to Amoeba. I've been to Amoeba, and it's amazing. They've got everything, but it's also sensory overload. I mean, it is, if you got, and I have ADHD, man, it is hard to focus on anything in that store because there's so much going on all the time. It's just like you need to plan a week to go through Amoeba.
Do you see record stores that like are better, like not better, but like the ones that are doing more things within in-house? Like, are those the ones that succeed a little bit more? Like, say they have, like a venue attached to the back or something, like stuff like that, or is it more or less like just it's a crapshoot? Like you gotta. There's no formula to it.
I think it's a bit of knowing the community. Example, Logansport, Indiana, right? Not a mecca anywhere. No one would ever be like, I'm going on vacation and I'm going to Logansport. Yet there is a store there called the Record Farm, and Matt, who is the owner of that, took his little record store and built something around it based on the needs of the community. And they sell musical instruments there. Then he added arcade games. So you can go in there and you can play classic 80s, 90s video games, pinball games. They added a bar. You go upstairs, there's a comic book store, there's a barber shop. So it's this huge facility now that has become, and they do live shows there. It's what the community needed, and now it is a focal point of that community. And it's fun. I mean, they just did an event with the Super Soakers there. And it was amazing. Super Suckers. Super Suckers,
yeah. Awesome. That's awesome. So I know you have an affinity for music. I've seen your Instagram, Dr. Disc, and I like that you can sit there and have like, you've got like the new X record, or you could have something up on a picture of like, a classic rock record that everyone knows. But then you turn around and you have these finds that I like to say this is like what I gravitate to the most, like the more independent artists, the stuff that's out there. I had sent you the Middle Out record, and you seem to really like that one. And like, that's like what I love the most about sharing music with people is like finding something like the Middle Out record and then being like, hey, you need to hear this. And then when people hear it, like just to watch their reaction. One of my favorite bands out of Boston is a band called Coffin Salesman. I talk about them a lot on this podcast. And I remember I brought my buddy to see them play. I was like, you need to see this band perform. And like, I watched him during the whole set because I needed to see his reaction to how awesome their performance was. And like, that's I don't know, there's something about that's like a dopamine hit for me. So like with I see that you kind of float in those waters with me there, I think.
Well, okay. So the first issue. So let's talk about your record club, because that's what I love the most about it is, so you've sent me 3 records, 2 releases. I knew nothing about any of them. Nothing. And that was exciting to me, right? I'm going to drop that needle, and I don't know what this could... I mean, it could sound like Yoko Ono yelling, and I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to listen to it, because I don't know anything about this. But the record club felt that it's important to put this out there, and so I should listen to it. I love that stuff. I really do. I mean, it's funny how many times when I'm talking with people and they'll ask me like, well, what's your favorite band to listen to? And I'll say, oh, I love the Boll Weevils. And they're like, who? And I'm like, well, they've been around for like 40 something years, and the lead singer is now an ER doctor, and the lead guitarist used to be a principal at a school, and he's a teacher now. And and they're like, what? And like, they just don't get it. Like if it's not Taylor Swift, if it's not, I mean, and I like Van Halen, but if they don't know the name, they just have no concept of like, there's so much good music out there from people who no one knows the band. So when you send me something like that, I'm going to put it on, I'm going to listen to it, and if I like it, I'm going to try and tell the world.
No doubt. Yeah. It's a great, and I just like the concept of like when I took the record club, it's such a good concept. Like I'm going to pay, and this is how it was. I was paying this guy to send me records he likes. You know what I mean? It's as easy as that. Like it's pretty wild.
Yeah. It's a great concept. And, there's a lot of small labels who I think have found some success with the record club idea. I've been turned on to some stuff through Asian Man Record that I probably would not have otherwise found out about if it wasn't for some of the club releases they do. And I will go back. So you said you were born in what year did you say you were born in? 91, I think?
81,
like that?
81.
Okay, 81.
Yeah.
So I was born in 67. So I'm a tad bit older. But I remember signing up for the very first Sub Pop Singles Club. And I remember getting Nirvana Love Buzz. And I remember getting Soundgarden and Mudhoney and knowing nothing about these. Nothing. Now, do I have any of those still? No. Because there was another friend of mine who loved that stuff. And so when I got done listening to it, I would pass it on to him. And now I'm like, oh my God, I could have paid for my kids' college. But I love that idea though, because I would have never been, I think the first time I ever heard about Reverend Horton Heat was from the Sub Pop Singles Club.
So what's the connection for you to music? Like what is it about music that keeps you going, keeps you alive, keeps you, you know what I'm saying?
So my initial connection was WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I absolutely love that show. Absolutely love that show when I was a kid. And the reason why you'll never find that show in syndication, by the way, is because they use real music on the shows, and to cover the rights for the reuse of all that music is insanely expensive, and so you never find it on syndication. But I connected with Dr. Johnny Fever. I mean, and so I went to college, and I worked at 2 different college radio stations, and music has just always been a big part of my life. I diddle around a little with the guitar, but embarrassingly, like I probably could play a Ramones song if it's 3 chords and that's all I have to focus on. But I'm in such admiration of seeing live performers get up and do their craft. And again, I've seen some bad bands, but I'll still buy their record because again, they're out there doing it, right? They're trying to, like, I'm that guy who, if I see a homeless person on the street and they're asking me for money, I'm going to walk by. But if that same person is playing a saxophone or playing a harmonica or playing a guitar, I'm going to walk over there and I'm going to drop $5, $10 in there because I'm like, they're putting themselves out there to play that. And it may be the worst music ever, but I'm going to support them because they're trying, right? Mm-hmm. They're putting art out into the world. Mm-hmm. And we've got to support that more.
Yeah, for sure. Are you from the Chicago area? Like, is that your?
I was born in Chicago proper, and then my dad worked for Shell Oil, and so I got the opportunity to visit many cities. I did my high school formidable years down in Houston. When bands like the Big Boys were playing, were starting out in Houston. I was a skate punk back in the 80s, which, by the way, being a skate punk in Houston, not real good, not very popular. If you didn't play football down there, you weren't well. Yeah, so there were a lot of beatings that I took on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Yeah. So now when you see like what's going on with like the punk rock scene in Chicago, the more, the independent guys that are out there, like, what are some of your bands? What are some of the bands that you like right now? Like, I'm a huge fan. I mean, I Blind Atom in the Federal League, they're Canadian Rifle, you know what I mean? These bands, Sincere Engineer, these are bands that like I love listening to.
Well, so Sincere Engineer is an amazing band slash woman, and I happen to have been I was given the opportunity to hear the new Boll Weevils 40 track that's coming out, and I believe it's the one that's on the Red Scare 20th anniversary album that's coming out, and Sincere Engineer sings on that song with them, and it's really good, really, really good. You know, it's interesting because when I do interviews with bands, and the majority of the interviews I'm doing are with East Coast bands or West Coast bands, and so I'll always ask them, you know, what made your coast different than the other coasts? And then when I talk to people from Chicago, so like I just interviewed one of the guys from Jesus Lizard, and a month before that I interviewed the bassist from the Effigies, which, you know, I think most people know that the lead singer passed away in a tragic bicycle accident, but they still have a brand new album that's coming out. I think it's supposed to be out around October or November, and I will tell you, it's going to surprise people. It's going to make a lot of people's top 10 lists. This new Effigies album is so good, and it's so tragic that what could be their greatest album ever, the lead singer is no longer around to enjoy it. But there's something about the Chicago ethos. I don't know if it's, you know, it's so damn cold and it's so damn gray here all the time.
I draw comparisons between Chicago and like the New England, like, you know what I mean, like that like working class punk rock kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Naked Ray Gun is one of my favorite bands of all time. Peg Boy, but there's just there's a band that I did not know about that had been around like 25 years ago and just finally put out another album called Woolworthy. And from Chicago, great band. Somehow the album fell into my hand. It's on my top list. Great little album. Nobody knows about them, right? Trust me, people, go listen to Woolworthy. You'll enjoy it.
I just recently discovered Criminal Kids. They're awesome. Holy crap. Those guys put on like a clinic for guitar playing. It's insane. It's insane.
Well, again, it gets back to I enjoy a club or I enjoy a store owner who will tell me, hey, this is a record you need to have. And, you know, I'll go back to Bill, who's the owner of Dr. Strange, because he and I talk regularly, and he'll tell me, he'll say, hey, this is an album you need to have. And I've never heard it, and I trust him. And I'm like, if Bill tells me to buy it, I need to have that. I'm going to get it. That's what I love about music. That's what I love about record store owners, too. I want somebody who's going to challenge me to listen to something different than the same 4 bands that I've been listening to over and over and over and over.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like to have those be your favorite, that's great. But like to have someone to be able to be like, hey, check this out too, like that. And again, that's what was always my appeal. I feel like too. You know what I mean? Like I loved going into the old shops, and we just got one in town. Like probably, I think he's been open 4 months now. You know, and like I try to hop in there as much as I can. And sometimes if I have like an extra from the record club, I'm like, hey man, you can have, and he's like, how much you want for it? I'm like, no, that's for you. You know what I mean? And he doesn't know what to do because he's used to selling them. You know what I mean?
Well, and there's a band out of Australia called Civic. I didn't know anything about them. Was listening to another podcast, guys talking about this band Civic, plays a couple songs. I'm like, wow, this is really good. I pick up the album, blown away. Like, how do people not know about this band? Then there's a band in England now called Chisel. They've had one album out. Hardcore, in your face, aggressive, so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the Chisel. Yeah, yeah, that's good stuff. It's great, and it's great to connect. I feel like when you connect with somebody on some music that's on like not, you know, that's not like a huge like national act, like I don't know, there's just like this like it's just something special, you know what I mean, when you can connect with somebody on something like that. It's just it's a wild experience. Music is just a wild thing, you know.
I will tell you that music can level all playing fields because, I told you I've done a lot of, I've done a bunch of interviews. And so I'll go to Riot Fest, which is a big 3-day festival in Chicago. They say it's punk music, but, when it started out like 15 years ago, it was. Now it's gotten a lot more mainstream stuff. But I had the opportunity to sit down with a band called Fake Names, which the band themselves, probably most people have never heard, but it's Brian Baker from, Fugazi and all these other, and the lead singer is from Sweden. His name's Dennis. And I had the opportunity to sit down with him, and he said to me when the interview started, I asked if I could do the interview with you because I collect records. And I don't think I asked him any of the questions I had written down to ask him. We just started talking about records. And he was so into record collecting. And I felt like, wow, this guy's interviewing me. He's so excited. He's asking all this stuff. And here I am talking to somebody, right, who is the lead singer of a band, and he just wants to talk about record collecting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something special, man. That's a special thing. Like, and it's, I don't know. I absolutely enjoy like that aspect. And like, it's funny because like when the last time Rev was on, he called me a journalist, and I was like, I didn't know. I was like, I'm not a journalist, dude. I just sit here and talk to people about things. You know what I mean? And he was like, yeah, you are. So I have to like kind of like, okay. And I have to take it. And I'm like, okay. But like, there's just like, it's just special. Like to hear someone that, like you said, like they have this band and you're about to interview them and all they want to talk about with you is like collecting records. Like that's a huge connection that like, again, it brings all this stuff brings all sorts of people together. I feel like, and it's wonderful.
It amazes me too, because I think there's maybe this belief out there that if you're a punk rocker, that punk music is all you listen to. And before COVID, I think it was before COVID, maybe it was right after COVID. I don't know. It's all a blur at this point. I had the opportunity to take Susie Moon record store shopping and took her and the whole band. And Goldmine said, get what you want to get. We'll take care of it. But when you're done shopping, I want to get a picture of you with all the records, and we want to talk a little bit about why you got what you got. Not of the 4 band members, not a single one of them got a single punk record.
Yeah. It's cool.
It was awesome.
It's awesome to see that kind of thing for sure. So let me ask you about like collecting records. Like what do you look for? What should people look for? Like I don't know what 180 gram means when it comes to a record. When it comes to other things, I might know, but this I don't know. So like, kind of, can you kind of like, and then like for just in general, let's just talk about vinyl because I need to learn more, and I feel like you're the person that's going to teach me.
Well, and you probably know what it means without knowing the definition, but I guarantee you, if I handed you a record from the 70s, and then I handed you like the new, let's say the new Drowns album, one is going to feel like rubber. Like it feels like it's going to want to flop over in your hand, because in the 70s everything was made really thin. The records that like Pirates Press puts out, those are quality records. And when you go to 180 gram, you're talking a really heavy vinyl, real thick. And I think I've even seen some as high as like 220. And obviously the thicker the vinyl, the deeper the grooves, right? And which means the longer that the music should last on that record. The negative of vinyl is that every time you play it, it degenerates a little. It does. No matter what you do, it does. No matter whether you have a Crosley $59 record player, which, by the way, will help that record deteriorate a whole lot faster, or you have a $25,000 record player with a $5,000 needle, every time you play that, you are wearing into the groove. It's a fact, which is why the CD industry took off with such a big bang when they first came out, because people are like, oh, CDs are the greatest future of music because you'll never lose anything, right? You'll never destroy anything. You can play it as many times as you want. Yeah, well, what they didn't realize is that years after years after years of oxidation and stuff, sometimes those zeros and ones disappear. And you go to play a CD now and you're like, wait, there used to be a song there and it's gone. So, but so going back to your initial question of like, what should you look for when you're looking for, a quality album? To me, it's not about the weight. I would want to take the album out and I'd want to look at it. And if there's scratches on it, whether it's 180 gram or whether it's a 1970s thin piece of plastic, I'd walk away from it, right? If it's got scratches on it, you're gonna hear all those pops, and you might skip. Even as good as your record player might be, or as many pennies as you're gonna put on the needle to help push it down, it's gonna pop, right? So, I always tell people, get what you like. I picked up a copy of Black Flag Damage, an original copy that the sleeve itself is falling apart, but the vinyl is in great shape. And you know what? As much as I'd love to have one that's got a great sleeve, I don't play the sleeve. I play the vinyl. So I don't mind having one that's got a beat up cover, as long as it sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now with today's music, like it's because it's mastered differently, right, than it was like in the 70s and 80s and stuff. Like you have a different sound, right? You have less of that pop. You have more of a cleaner sound in today's record. But I still like it started, the whole reason why I started with records again was because I kind of missed that hiss and pop sound.
Well, and listen, I hear this all the time, the whole why lo-fi is becoming so popular again. I mean, you're right. You can engineer a record so good that it just doesn't sound real, right? That it doesn't have any of that ambiance to it. Yet, and I'm trying to remember if I've got the record here. Let's see if I can flip through it. And I'm going through some vinyl here. Yes, here it is. So another podcast, I was listening to this band Duster. Didn't know anything about Duster. Somebody said, "Oh, you get Numeral Group. You got to get Duster." It is so lo-fi. It is awesome. It's like two guys sitting in a room playing a guitar, and that is it. And like one take, and this is what we're going with, and it's really good.
Yeah, I see like what's least of all recording studios in New York. They do like one take live recording stuff now on vinyl. It's a lathe cut, you know what I'm saying? But like it's a one take thing, and like I've done that. Like I've bought them from bands. So and then like it's one song, one take. It's a little pricey, but they give you like a personalized message on there. You know what I mean? It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I honestly I've listened to lathe cuts, and like I don't really know the difference between that and like a vinyl record. You know what I mean?
No, and I mean you won't. In most cases, you won't hear much difference. I mean, the lathe cut means it's being recorded or pressed onto that vinyl that you're getting at the actual speed that it's playing. So for someone to if you were to buy a album that is a 33-minute album, for that side, it's going to take 33 minutes to make that one side of that album on a lathe. So not real cost effective, right? And so you're right. You get a lot of real small pressings, like 25 copies, and if you want a copy, it's $50. And that's how they usually sell them. But again, if you're a fan of the band and you like that niche, I think it's a cool thing to own. I own, I think, 2 or 3 different lathe cut records because I wanted to support the band, and 2, I just felt like my collection wasn't complete if I didn't have at least a few in there. So that if somebody talked to me and was like, "Hey, I've never seen a lathe record yet," I could be like, "Well, here's one. Yeah. I've got it right here."
Yeah,
Yeah.
And even when people,
it doesn't sound.
People talk about like how the different variant colors of vinyl now, like they sound different than just like the black. I don't hear the difference. I don't really know the difference in that either.
I have heard from people who work at pressing plants that the purest vinyl is clear. That's the purest. That the best sound is on, because you're not adding any. That even black is an additive color. It's not the norm. It's an additive color. It's the cheapest additive, so that's why most records were printed in black way back. So, again, I'm sure there are some people who can be like, oh, that's not clear. That must be a colored vinyl. I can't tell. Where I can tell the difference is on a picture disc. There are some really poorly done picture discs where they spent so much time and energy on the picture that the sound is bad. Now, on the opposite side of that, and let's talk about our good friends at Pirate Press, 45 Adapters, that band, they put out some amazing picture discs.
I have one. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and the sound is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. I think in my thing with when I buy and I have bought picture discs that sounded different, right? I think they're more for show than anything. Like if I'm buying a picture disc, I probably already own a copy of it that I can listen to, because the Purple Rain one is one that always comes to mind when I think of a picture disc because it's amazing. It's an amazing looking.
Oh, see now you think of that, and I think of Samantha Fox.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I don't.
If people haven't seen the Samantha Fox picture discs, you need to look it up. But I would tell you, don't do it with kids around.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I haven't seen that one. So yeah. So it's just like, I just like, I don't know. I'm heavily involved in this vinyl thing now, and I don't know what happened. I went from I'm like, all right, I got like 30 records, and now I've got way too many. Like, I did this, like, I'm too involved. Like, I can't have a Discogs. I have too many records to start a Discogs now. So, like, I'm, like, old school. Like, I have a catalog book, and I'm cataloging them by you know what I mean? Like, Dewey Decimal Point kind of system, and, like, it's crazy. It's like...
I will tell you that I thought that way also for the longest time, and then COVID hit. And I found that I was sitting on my couch with a lot of time on my hand. And so I said to my wife, you know what? I'm going to finally do it. And I'm going to categorize. I'm going to get all my albums into Discogs. And I did it. It took about 2 weeks to do it. And it's a lot easier to do now than it was way back when. Because way back when, there were times I was going to enter an album and no one else had ever entered it. So I had to do all the work for it. Now, most albums have been in the system. And so now it's just going in and finding the right one and clicking on it and going, add to my collection. But I like using it, I'll tell you, because it's really helped in cutting down and buying duplicates. Because I have it right here on my phone.
Right. That's why I think the catalog book has helped me remember what I have. Because I'm going through them like, why do I have this? Why do I have, you know what I mean? So, because I have a couple, like, especially like, when I see, like, all right, I like Hot Water Music, so I'm just gonna, like, when I see their records, I'm gonna grab them, and then I end up with like too many of them, and it's like, oh, what are you doing, Trev? What are you doing? Like, I've got about 80 that I haven't even listened to yet, and that I bought in the last so odd months, So,
well, so that's a good point, and it was something that I thought about a year and a half ago, and we all make these great New Year's resolutions, and so a year and a half ago, I made the New Year's resolution that I was going to start documenting every record I play, because I wanted to see how much of my collection that I really listen to versus how much do I just own because, well, I've got a collection and I've got the Clash records. So if I've got the Clash records, I've got to have Sandinista because, it completes the collection, but I've never played Sandinista, right? So what I've been doing is every time I listen to a record, I take out an index card and I write down the date and the time that I listened to it, and I stick it in the album. And then if I listen to it, if I listen to it again, the index card's already there, and I just add the next date on it. So it's allowing me to see how many of my records I really use and listen to. Also lets me know on any given year what were those albums I went back to more and more and more.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea. I need to do that. I think my place is full of like records and notebooks because apparently I'm addicted to buying notebooks, and I have notebooks for everything. Right? I started this year. I started a notebook just to track how many records I buy in each month, And I remember January. I was like, it was like at the end of the month. I'm like, I think I bought like 3 this month. I had bought 9. I had bought 9 records.
See, to me, the problem with that notebook is that is evidence in a divorce hearing.
No doubt. Yeah, you're right. There was one. I was so happy in May. I didn't buy a single record, and then June came and Flatfoot 56 was in town, so I went to that show. I ended up with like 5 records, and then like I was doing something else, and I was on Bandcamp, and I found a bunch. And so I went from like, oh, I didn't buy any records in these 2 months to like I bought enough for 6 months in June. You know, it's crazy. So your Instagram, what's your Instagram handle? It's Doc. Is it at Dr. Disc?
It's Doc DOC_DISC.
Okay, all right. At
Doc Disc.
Yeah, Doc Disc. And you take photographs of the records you are spinning, and you say very kind things about the bands that you're listening to at that moment. I enjoy that. I try to do stuff like that. I have to get better at taking pictures. Everything I take looks like a Bigfoot photo. It's blurry. You know what I mean? It's blurry. You don't know what's going on. You know, and it doesn't do the record any justice when some of them look really nice. So, when did you start that? Have you been doing that for a minute?
Yeah, I've been doing it for a while. It was actually something that my editor and I decided to start doing because I think, I'll be honest and tell you that I think Goldmine was a little late to the game on the whole social media stuff. I think since we've dove into it now, I think we're doing a phenomenal job. But we were just trying to find ways to connect with some of our readers. And again, for me, if I put out an album and I'm like, folks, this is a top 10 album. I think this is a great album. If one other person goes out and buys it and has that same feeling, like, oh my God, that was so good. That's like a win-win. Again, that band that you turned me on to, that record that you sent me, I'm like, holy crap, I've never heard of this band before. How did I not know about this? I want to spread the word because I want to let people know that this is an album that just came out this year. Go buy it. Support the band. It's a good piece of vinyl.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. And I found them through social media. Like I am, as much as I hate social media, I'm finding more and more music through there. And I think there's something to say to that. You know what I mean? Like it's another, again, it's like, I mean, you can't, we have the whole world at our fingertips, right? And like, it's if you can use these platforms properly, it gets you very far, you know?
I agree. I mean, again, please though, don't rely on Spotify to make your artists wealthy because it ain't going to happen. Buy their albums. If you go to their concerts, buy some of the merchandise at the show. That's the best thing you can do. Put money in their pocket.
Yeah, I went to see one band and like I already had everything that they like kind of had, and I was like, I'm just gonna Venmo you some gas money, like you know what I mean? Like get to the next tour date without a problem, you know?
Yeah,
so you do what you can.
There's been. I'm not gonna lie. I have the opportunity to rub elbows with a lot of people in the industry, and I'll go to a lot of shows, and they'll be like, "Well, here, man, have a shirt. We appreciate you promoting us." I'm like, "I'll take a shirt, but I'm gonna pay for it." And they're like, "No, we want you to have it." And I'm like, "No, I'll pay for it because again, this is a business for you guys. I'm not looking for something free."
Yeah. I do that. I do the same thing with bands all the time, and like people will put me on a guest list, and I won't use it. I'll just get there and pay for my ticket. Like, here you go. You know what I mean? Like, because it means something. You know?
I'll be honest and tell you, I do love a good guest list. I'll use that, but I will take the money that I would have spent on the ticket, and I will make sure that the band gets all that money.
There you go. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's a good thing to do for sure. Yeah. So, man, this was awesome. This was like a quick. I don't think this was an hour long, and we've gotten here. Let's talk about. You were saying something. You have a record. You have a record in your possession that.
I do. I have a autographed Frank Turner album that needs a new home. it needs to get to a new home. And so we're going to do a trivia question. And the way we'll give it out is you have to respond to my Instagram account, which is, again, DOC_DISC. Very easy. That's it. Doc Disc. And so our trivia question, and maybe they picked up on it if they've listened carefully to this episode, but there was a band that came to town in the last like 3 or 4 months, and I took that band shopping, and the lead singer and guitarist of that band was on one of our podcasts. And so the question is, if you are the first one to Instagram me the name of that band, I will eat the cost of sending you this signed Frank Turner album. And I'm going to make it even easy. You can go to the Goldmine website, Goldmine Mag, and you can look up and see who we took record store shopping. And so you will see the pictures of that individual carrying his fat stack of wax.
That's so awesome. Oh, well, thank you for offering to do this giveaway through, with the struggling artist. That means a lot. It means a lot. And
anytime.
And again, like I had, I'm happy we had a chance to do this. If I ever find myself in the Chicago area again, I'll be hitting you up for sure. Maybe you can bring me to some of those spots to I just need to know where to go to get records there,
Oh, you come to Chicago and I will take you to all the best places.
No doubt. If you find yourself in Massachusetts or Rhode Island or Connecticut, let me know. I'll come out and we can come out and listen to some records.
That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun.
Cool. And now, again, let's do your social media. Let's shout out Goldmine one more time.
Goldminemag.com is the website, but you can find me on Instagram at DOC_DISC.
All right, and that's the show. I want to thank Dr. Disc again for being today's guest on the Struggling Artist Podcast. In the show notes, you will find links to find him, to find the Goldmine magazine. Be sure, if you're listening to this and you know the answer to that trivia question he just asked, go get it. Get a signed autograph copy of a Frank Turner album. It's easy. It's free. All you got to do is answer the question he said. Thank you to Chris Chavez for being producer of the show. We are so happy you are back with us, buddy. Thank you to State Line Records for being sponsors of this podcast. Thank you to the Loser Circle for allowing us to use their song Great Illusion of Time off of their album Took Long Enough as the theme song to the podcast. Thank you everyone over at Patreon supporting us and believing in what we're doing. If you want to see what we're doing, head to patreon.com/podcast TSA. The fees are inexpensive. Starting at the $3 tier, you start to get new shows that that you can listen to, as well as early access and giveaways that I do from time to time and all that stuff. Go check it out. Thank you to everybody who listens. A few weeks ago, I put out the bat signal. I asked you all to reach out to the hotline to give Chris your best wishes or get well wishes. And you all answered the call, and I appreciate that. Chris, we talk about it in a Chopping It Up episode once he returned. It meant a lot. It kept him going. It kept him positive during his illness. So I thank you all for being awesome listeners. And I always tell everyone how awesome our listeners are over here at The Struggling Artist. If you want to leave us a voicemail or text us, the hotline number is 774-570-1552. We do all sorts of things with the hotline. I use a lot of it for some of the Patreon shows. I would love more voicemails so I could play them on this show so you guys can hear. Thank you to everybody for supporting us and doing what you do. No song from Dr. Disc, so we're going to get out of here with Loser Circle song. Here it is, the theme song to the podcast, one of the best songs that ever came out of Boston, Massachusetts, from one of the best bands that's ever been from Boston, Massachusetts. The song is called The Great Illusion of Time. You can find this off of Loser Circle's album, Took Long Enough. You can find a link to that through the website, through our link tree. Head over to Bandcamp and support them. Until next week, take care of yourselves, and we will talk to you then.